You met someone, and from the very first conversation, it was electric. They responded immediately to every text, and within maybe a few weeks, they told you they'd never felt this way before. They wanted to see you all the time, talked about the future, agreed with everything you said. You thought, finally, this is it. This is the real thing. And then a few weeks, months, or maybe even a year in, you realize you've been with someone who couldn't actually love you, or who was controlling, or who slowly turned into someone you didn't recognize. And the thing you couldn't shake was, but it felt so real. Today, I'm not doing the standard look for red flags thing. I hate that phrase. It puts the whole burden on you to spot something that by its nature doesn't look like a flag at all. And then when you don't see it, somehow that's your fault. Nope. So stop. So we're not doing that here. The reason red flags feel like green flags is that high intensity behaviors mimic the outputs of real love, things like attention and certainty and devotion, without including any of the inputs, okay? Things like time, consistency, and really being actually known. So today I'm walking you through 8 specific behaviors that consistently get mistaken for green flags, plus one tool, I call it the PACE test, that does the work of all of them at once. You're going to leave with a real radar for this, so stay tuned. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host. You know who I am, Dr. Abby Medcalf. And this is a good one today. I've been doing, on my TikTok, I've done a lot of like red flags that look like green flags, and they always get a ton of views. People ask about this a lot. So let's get into it. So why do red flags feel like green flags? That's the obvious first question, I think. So these behaviors confuse you, not because you can't see them, but because they activate the same reward circuits in your brain that genuine connection activates. And the problem is they do it faster. They're quick. Real intimacy is slow. Performance is fast. And really, that's the whole story. I did an episode on situationships recently, or not that long ago, that I will link to. And whenever, by the way, I'm going to give you some good research today. And whenever I say, link to a past episode or the research or the great free giveaway today, all of that can be found below the video if you're watching on YouTube or on my website, abbymedcalf.com. Just go to this episode. So I'm going to talk about biological anthropologist Helen Fisher again. I've talked about her a million times. Total girl crush. I have. She has spent decades scanning the brains of people in early stage romantic attraction. And what she's found, and her colleagues, is that the early phase of love, it activates the same circuits that light up in cocaine use. I've talked about this before. It's an addiction. It acts like an addiction in the brain. So when someone love bombs you or future fakes with you or mirrors you back to yourself, they're not just being charming, right? That's not all that is. They're flooding those circuits, those circuits that are all about addiction, literally, and motivation and focus on something. And this intensity itself is really what your brain is reading as the significance. So, and if you layer on top of that, the cultural script, I think all of us have absorbed about what real love is supposed to feel like, the chemistry, the certainty, they can't think of anyone else. And to me, it's like a perfect storm, but obviously in a really bad way. Well, perfect storms are in a bad way when we talk about that. So the behaviors that should warn you really become the behaviors that confirm to you that this is the one. That's the problem. And that's, again, part of this whole issue. Sorry, I have something in my eye if you're watching me on YouTube. Okay, we're better. So why this is harder now than it used to be. I get asked that a lot. Like, is this different now? It seems like it's harder than it used to be. So I want to take a beat here to really name something specific to the time we're in. Back in my day, yeah, I'm 100 years old, right? We all know I'm old. way back in my day, if you met, before cell phone, when I was dating, before cell phones, before anything, before all this interaction, if you met someone, you might call them on the phone once or twice before your first date. Maybe, maybe. And it was hard, remember we had one phone in the house for, there was a lot of people in my house growing up, it was in the kitchen so there was no privacy. I mean, it was like that. Okay. So you'd maybe talk to them once or twice, but again, like not in super high detail because people were listening. You'd see them in person, get a real read. And after the date, you would talk again to plan the next one. There was space between contacts, time to feel your own feelings, time to notice whether you were actually interested or just flattered. And also, I will say this, you likely knew people who knew that person. That's probably how you met. Or you met them at work, so you'd seen them for a while. Or at school, you'd seen them in your classes. Like, this is how we used to meet each other back in the day. Someone introduced you that you knew, right? But again, so you got people you can question. You have context for their behavior. And there's some known history to make decisions. So even if you have that great first phone conversation, it's maybe because you've already talked to the person that introduced you, like, hey, I've got a cousin who's really great. You should meet him. Here's why. And gives you all the oh, he had a girlfriend for a while, but they broke up and now this happened, blah, blah, blah. Nowadays, you know nothing except what the person tells you. You know nothing about who they are, how they act, anything except for what they show you in a very short amount of time. So, right? So now you have no idea who this person really is, and you can only base your opinions on what they tell you and how they act in those moments that you interact with them. And like I said, the problem is there's a false intimacy right away because you can text someone all day, every day from the moment you match, right? Hundreds of messages before you ever sit across from each other. So by the time you do, your brain is convinced this is a real relationship because in your nervous system's accounting, you've been in a constant conversation for 2 weeks. That is a relationship to your brain. That is why, I constantly tell people, stop with all the texting, get in front of a person, meet them. It's so much better. Yes, you need to have some whatever to rule out people that are crazy or really have nothing in common with you. But although I will tell you, I had someone, one of my clients who said very clearly in her profile on the dating apps, she was on a couple, I don't want to date anyone with children. End of. Like, it's fine if you, good luck if you have them. It's not what I want. I don't want to date anyone with children. And she said, I don't have any. I don't want to date anyone with them. So please, take yourself out of the equation. Sure enough, she matches with this guy. They have multiple conversations. Seems good. They go out on a date. On the first date, he says, he's like laughing, like, he, like, I have this funny thing to say, I get, I need to let you know I do have a 3-year-old son. She's like, what? I was so clear about this. And he's like, well, you wouldn't have gone out with me if I had told you and I knew we would have good connection. It's unfriggin' believable what people will do. Again, that wouldn't happen in the old days, my days, because you knew more. Somebody would have told you, oh yeah, my cousin, but he has a kid, and you would have been like, oh, never mind. Don't even introduce us. Do you know what I'm saying? It's so much harder now with all this stuff. Anyway, okay. So this is when we can talk about another girl crush I have. I have many of them, don't I? Yes, I do. There's a lot of amazing women in the world. There's an MIT researcher named Sherry Turkle. I read one, oh God, she had this trilogy of books. She had this one book, Alone Together, I read many years ago. Changed my life. Anyway, that's not the book I'm even talking about though. She's been studying technology and human connection for decades at MIT. It's like, so she, she's reasonable. Let's gonna say she's smart. I have to tell you, I remember when I read that first book, Alone Together, it took me so long to get through because she's so friggin' smart. I had a hard time reading it. Like, it was so good and worth your while if you like science and all the things I'm going to talk about. She writes beautifully, but I'm just not as smart as her. So it takes a minute. But anyway, she's been documenting all this for decades. Okay. The constant low friction availability of digital communication creates the appearance of closeness without the actual, what word do I want to use? Without the actual weight of shared real life experience. Again, your brain doesn't differentiate well between hours of texting and hours of being with someone. Both register as time spent in your brain, but one of them is real and one of them isn't. One of them's a screen, and that is the problem. And her research in this, I don't think anyone's even close because she's been doing it so long. Again, can you imagine calling someone on the phone as much as you text them in early dating? Yeah, just think about it. If every time you were texting, all those little tiny texts were all phone calls, I know. You'd be hoarse. You wouldn't have a voice left and exhausted by week 2. We have, sadly, to me and to many researchers, we have normalized a level of access that in any other context would be considered way, way too much, way too fast. And then we wonder why everyone seems to move so quickly into something that turns out to be wrong or hollow or not a good fit. So I want you to keep this in mind when I get to the 8 behaviors in a minute. I'm going to get there. But every one of them is amplified by texting. So love bombing, which I'm going to talk about, it's not just verbal anymore, right? That's like 47 messages before noon. That's love bombing too. Hyper availability, which I'm also going to talk about, isn't just being free for dates. It's being on the other end of every text instantly all day. The apps haven't changed what red flags are. They've changed how fast they can be deployed. And that's the issue here. So I have what I call the pace test. Okay, so before we get into the 8, I want to give you the through line. This is the through line because once you have it, you don't actually need the list anymore. I'll tell you that. I'm going to give you the list, but you don't need it because real connection moves at the speed of trust. I'm going to say that again. I need you to write that on a piece of paper and put it on your mirror or write it on your mirror, whatever, right? Real connection moves at the speed of trust. Trust is built incrementally through small, very small moments of consistency over time. You see someone in different contexts, under different stresses, with different people. You watch what they do when they're tired, when you've disappointed them, when they don't get their way, when the waiter brings the wrong meal. Each of those moments adds another piece of evidence, and your sense of who this person is gets built brick by brick, which is how it's supposed to happen. Performance can't do that. Performance has to skip the time part because time exposes performance. So performance compresses everything into intensity. A month of texting becomes a relationship. A weekend together becomes the one. The grand declaration replaces, again, the slow accumulation of evidence. And because intensity feels like depth, your brain reads the speed as significance. That's what happens. That's the biology of it. So the pace test, it's really kind of one question I have. When something feels really good in early dating, I want you to ask yourself, is this happening at the speed of getting to know someone or at the speed of someone needing me to commit before I can see clearly? Okay, that's it. That's the whole tool, really. Every behavior we're about to walk through fails the pace test in the same way. It really does. And I say with love, I've been doing this 40 years. I think I did a quick TikTok video about this the other day and someone put wrong in the comments, no, that's not right. And I'm just laughing. I'm like, where's your degree from? And obviously I say with love, you don't have to have a degree, actually. I take that back. But I do have 40 years of experience. I've been doing this a long time. in multiple states, countries, people all over the world. Like I'm telling you, I'm with so much love in my heart. I could tell that person who wrote wrong under my video, right, was poor baby. I felt bad. I was like, oh, there's somebody who fell madly in love with somebody and they think they know all, And I'm not saying that 100% of the time you can't have sort of a love at first sight thing. That happens, sure. In my experience, it's so unbelievably rare. I can only think of a few examples of the thousands, tens of thousands of people I've talked to. Maybe I could come up with 20 out of that. So yeah, you could be that, but what would it hurt to slow it down to make sure you're that, right? Again, it's like, what is the fear about slowing down? And I can tell you that the people, again, who come after me or come to me after, who come to me after one of these relationships ends, almost always say the same thing. That's what I find, that they do know. They'll say something like that. I knew, some part of me knew, and I overrode it. So what I want to give you today is the language for what you're noticing. So the next time something feels too good too fast, or like something's off, but you can't pinpoint it, you don't override yourself. That's really where we're going here, okay? And I did an episode a while ago on how to know when you're following your gut, how to trust your gut, and how to know when you're following that. And I will link to that in the blog also. So on the website, go to this episode, or I'll link to it under the video on YouTube. So here are the 8. Let's get to the 8. Number 1, of course, I already said love bombing. And so with each one, I'm going to kind of tell you what it looks like, why it's wrong, and what the tell is, kind of thing. So what love bombing looks like, within days, hours, weeks, they're telling you you're different from anyone they've ever met. They text constantly. They send gifts. They plan elaborate dates. They talk about the future. The volume of attention is overwhelming. And if I'm going to be honest, it's intoxicating. I've been on the other side of love bombing. I know. I think I've even love bombed someone else when I was dating, way back before I, had more therapy. I know I've done it. So I get it. So why it reads as positive is because your brain has been trained, by every romantic comedy you've ever seen and every pop song. Your brain has been trained to read this kind of intensity as love. Real love is supposed to feel, like fireworks, like being chosen, and being love bombed feels exactly like being chosen. So the tell, is that the intensity, it's not, I say with love, isn't responsive to you. It's the same with everyone they've ever dated. Trust me. If you watch closely, the things they're saying, I've never felt this way, you're not like anyone else, are about an idea of you, not the actual you, because they don't know you yet. They haven't known you long enough to be specific. The real version of devotion, it's specific. Real care notices the small things. It references what you actually said 2 weeks ago. In a way that shows they were paying attention. Love bombing is, I say with so much love, is a performance of love. Real care is paying attention. That's how we know the difference. I know. You might be thinking, no, it feels so good. I'm not saying it doesn't feel good. I'm saying it's not healthy. 2 is something, that they call like future faking. And what that looks like is within the first few weeks, they're talking about moving in together, taking trips next year, what your kids would look like, having babies with you. They include you in major plans, for holidays that are months away, for, oh yeah, my family's having a reunion this summer. I can't wait for them to meet you, and it's January, it's not, and you've been dating since, early January. This is not good. And why it reads as positive is that when someone offers a vision of the future with you in it, your nervous system reads safety. Your nervous system is so happy. You don't have to wonder where this is going. There's no more uncertainty. You don't have to feel anxious about being chosen. They've already chosen you, and they've done it very loud. So the tell, you want to watch for the gap between the future they're describing and the present they're showing up for. Are they planning a trip to Italy in 18 months, but consistently late to dinner? I had this with a client a few months ago. Are they talking about buying a house, but they're unable to follow through on small commitments, or they don't even have a job, or they have a job where they're not really making much money enough to buy a house, or they, right? Real partnership is built in the small reliabilities again, in the present, right? Not in these big cinematic promises about the future. The future faker can describe where you guys are going beautifully, the destination. They can describe that. They just can't tell you how today connects to it. They can't tell you how they're going to get to it, get there. And again, how well do they really know you? Have they seen you in multiple scenarios with your family, friends, through a difficult time at work? How can they be so sure you'll be great a year from now when they haven't been through anything difficult with you currently? If you have not been through something difficult with someone, and by the way, that's another red flag to me, which I'm not even going to go to, but if you're already having a really difficult time very early in the relationship, you shouldn't be. You shouldn't be. Very early in the relationship is the yummy, lovey part. Again, take it slow, but that should, we got love goggles on. If you're already having fights all the time and there's jealousy and there's controlling and there's all this other stuff, you already have your red flags very clearly. Those aren't green flags at all. So you already know, this should be the easier time. Why is it so hard? All right. Number 3 is mirroring. And what mirroring looks like is that they love everything you love. The same music, the same books, the same political views, same childhood traumas, same favorite restaurants. The compatibility maybe feels maybe a little eerie, like you found someone who finally gets you, like, oh, I've never been seen like this before. It reads as positive because this is the soulmate fantasy, right? This is the soulmate fantasy in action. Again, this sort of larger cultural script says that the right person will feel like, like coming home, like meeting somebody who already knows you. And mirroring really delivers exactly that feeling. That's why it feels that way. I know right now you're like, yeah. No, this is not healthy stuff. I know. The tell here is that real compatibility includes friction. I've mentioned this earlier. People who fit well together still disagree. They have different tastes, different rhythms, different opinions on everything from movies to how to load the dishwasher, right? Friction doesn't mean you're not a match. It means you're two whole people, which is really the only way to actually be a match. If everything is seamless, you got to ask yourself whether you're meeting your equal or your reflection, right? Who is this person at this point? Okay. Number 4 is hyper availability and what it looks like, right? They text back instantly every single time. They never seem to be busy. Their schedule reorients around yours immediately. They're available emotionally, physically, conversationally, like around the clock. So of course this reads as positive because when you've been left on, on red or kept waiting in past relationships, hyper availability feels like the answer to every prayer, right? Finally, somebody who's into you, someone who isn't playing games. But the tell here is that healthy adults have lives. They have other relationships. They have jobs, responsibilities, sleep cycles, internal states that aren't always available to a new partner, right? The healthy version of availability is responsive without being constant. So they text back when they can. They prioritize you in real moments, but their life continues to exist around you. If their life seems to be you within weeks, that vacuum will eventually need to be filled, and nobody can fill someone else's life and stay whole themselves. It doesn't work. Again, and what I say a lot is also, if they're blowing off other people to be with you, what does that tell you about who they are? And because you can be guaranteed that they'll be blowing you off in the future when something else seems more important in that moment. because that's what they do. They get excited about something and they blow you off. And I have had this countless times in my practice. Someone will say to me, oh my God, they used to devote all their time to me. Whenever I texted, they would be right there, da da da. And now we've been together a year, and now they're doing, maybe they're playing soccer all the time and they're really into their buddies and they're doing this and they're doing that. I'm like, yeah, of course they are. They showed you who they were early. They showed you that they blew off everything else for you. Did you think what? That their real life wasn't going to come back, or that they weren't going to have a next thing that they were passionate about or excited about, or work was going to, that pendulum has to shift at some point. If it doesn't, that's even creepier to me. I'll tell you that. But do you know what I'm saying? Like at some point that something's going to move. All right. Number 5 is, how do I want to say this? I would say early vulnerability, like too early vulnerability or trauma dumping, something like that. And what that looks like is, on the first, second, or third date, they tell you the deepest, most painful things about their childhood or their last relationship, their mental health. Maybe they cry, they share things they say they've never told anyone. That is the worst. Oh my God, if you hear ever in the first month of dating that I've never told anybody this, run, don't walk away. Run for the hills. Again, why it reads as something positive, why it reads as a green flag is that, right? Vulnerability. It's the hallmark of intimacy, Abby. This is the thing I've been waiting for. You read their willingness to share as a sign that you're trusted, that this is real. You feel honored. You feel, and naturally, right? Then you want to start sharing at the same depth. You want to go there too. The tell here is that real intimacy, again, is slow, but it's built through reciprocity. It is built through reciprocal, graduated disclosure. When someone skips the gradual part and dumps depth on you immediately, they're not building intimacy. They're establishing obligation. You now feel responsible for them in a way you wouldn't if you'd known them longer. Think about it. Oh my God, well, I don't want to say this or that because, now I know that he comes, he was beaten as a kid or something, or, oh, I don't want to abandon him like his first wife did. I feel kind of guilty. I don't know that we're a good mix, but I don't want, no. This is part of the manipulation, not necessarily a conscious one, but subconsciously for sure. They've short-circuited the normal vetting process, right? It's hard to say no to someone who just told you about their abuse history. And that's the point. Someone with a healthy relationship to their own pain doesn't share it with strangers as a connection strategy. They share it when there's been enough trust built that the sharing is appropriate. I'm pausing for, a moment there for you to get how important that is. All right. Number 6 is the fixer or rescuer. And what that looks like is that they want to take care of you, right? They want to fix the things in your life that are hard. They notice everything you struggle with and have a solution. Their attention to your problems is total. And of course, why that reads as positive is it feels like being seen. Again, it feels like being chosen. Notice how often I use that word. It feels like being chosen by someone strong who can hold you. If you grew up parentified, right, as like kind of an adult child, a parentified kid, or you don't get your needs met easily, being on the receiving end of this it's a relief unlike anything else you've ever experienced. I know. I've been in relationships like this. I know. The tell here is that a healthy partner is interested in your problems, but not invested in solving them. I'm going to say that again. Somebody healthy, a healthy relationship, of course they're interested in your problems, but they're not invested in solving them, especially early on. They support you while you handle your own life. The fixer's the opposite. Their identity in the relationship depends on you needing them, right? So watch what happens when you're doing well. Because I'll tell you what'll happen. Are they happy for you? Nope. Or is there, what I see is there's like a flatness, even often a quiet sabotage, sometimes a not so quiet sabotage, when you don't need their help anymore. I see it all the time. I see that so commonly, I can't tell you. The relationship was perfect when you were struggling. The minute you stabilized, not so perfect. Not so perfect. And they even maybe start to gaslight and other stuff starts to go on. It doesn't get good. Yeah, you sure that you're okay? Are you sure you still want to talk to your mom? I don't know. She was really mean to you before. You seem like you gave in real quick when you made up with her. That kind of stuff. Number 7 is possessiveness. Any possessiveness. So what it looks like, they want to spend all their time with you. They get a little jealous when you mention an old friend, but it's cute, because it's because they want you so much. They check in really often. They want to know where you are. You've already got all your locations locked in on your phones. They want to know who you're with, when you'll be home. I don't like the location phone thing. I need to tell you that right now. I do not like it. I do not like it. I find it why do you need to know, especially early? Obviously years in early, I guess, know where they are, but otherwise, what on earth do you need this information for? Again, I had a lifetime of dating and marriage before there was ever locations, right? I loved it. I love it now with my kids. And my kids like to know where I am, which is kind of cute, I think, right? Because I might forget to tell them, oh, I got a speaking engagement. I'll be in wherever, right? Because they don't live at home anymore. I like to know sometimes where they are, maybe I'm calling and I'm wanting to know, oh, are they at home or are they not? Or just for my Jewish mother anxiety, I like to physically know where they are, okay. That I get. My kids want to know where I am, where their mommy is, where their mama is. Okay. But my partner, we don't have locations on for each other. I do not have that with him. I know where he is. He tells me. I tell him. I don't like it. To me, it just speaks of something else. And I'm not saying that you're wrong if you have this, and definitely if you had a partner, if my partner was, had a chronic illness or something, or, I was worried about them, or that's the only time I could think that I would want that, to know where they were in case of an emergency, I guess. If they were had some life-threatening illness and I was afraid they'd pass out somewhere. I don't know. It's really, think about why you have that. Think about how often you check it. Just think about it. So again, why this possessiveness reads as positive is because possessiveness gets coded as proof of love. They wouldn't be jealous if they didn't care. They wouldn't want to know where you are if you didn't matter, right? Again, there's this cultural training to read this kind of attention as desire, and it's not. So the tell here is that, what's the tell here? This is an early stage of coercive control. I don't know what else to say. And yes, I'm going to use strong words on purpose. There's research on this. Evan Stark, one of my favorite, he pioneered the kind of modern understanding of coercive control. He as a pattern rather than a series of incidents. And his research has shown that over and over, that early possessiveness is one of the most reliable predictors of later abusive dynamics. I'm not always saying physical abuse, but of abusive dynamics. It, again, rarely is going to announce itself. It shows up as flattery. It shows up as, I just love you so much. I can't stand the thought of you with anyone else. I just love you so much. I want to know where you are. Real desire wants you to be more of yourself. It celebrates your other relationship. Real desire supports your independence. It gets excited when you have your own things going on. Real love, real desire is expansive. Your world gets bigger, not smaller. Control wants you smaller. It wants you more contained, more available. So really watch the direction of the pressure. Is it expanding you? Is it lighting you up? Or is it shrinking you, making you smaller? Okay. And then the final one I want to talk about is anybody who disparages their exes or talks a lot about not having no drama. no drama. And again, what it looks like is they probably tell you their last relationship was a nightmare. Their ex was crazy, abusive, manipulative. They're so glad they don't have that drama in their life right now. They don't do drama, something like that. And again, it reads as positive because it's signaling to you that they value peace, that they've moved on, that they're done with the chaos that ruined their last relationship. You somehow hear it as maturity. That's what happens. But the tell here is that this is a preview of how they're eventually going to talk about you, even when you're together, right? I talk about the Gottmans all the time, right? John and Julie Gottman and their Gottman Institute. They've done decades of research on relationship breakdown. And they talk about the four horsemen, and they show that contempt, especially contempt expressed about a partner, is one of the strongest predictors of relationship failure. End of. Someone who speaks just contemptuously about their last partner is showing you their default. That's what they're showing you. That no drama claim in particular, to me, what I see, again, 40 years of doing this, is often a way, it's like they're preemptively labeling any of your reasonable needs as drama. So you'll suppress them to keep your spot in the no drama column, right? Healthy people can describe a hard relationship with nuance. They can name what was difficult and also acknowledge their own role. Yeah, they don't need their ex to be a villain in the story. If the ex story is one-sided, with no curiosity, no accountability, no complexity, you're seeing the operating system of this person, and it's not good. The same lens is going to be turned on you. Again, whether you stay together or not, you are still going to be, because they don't take accountability. They don't have curiosity when things go wrong. They are showing you themselves, right? Over and over. It's such a big problem. It is something that okay, I'm just going to leave it there. Sorry. All right. So what if you recognize yourself in all this? There's those 8, right? What if you've been sitting there going, like I did, kind of like, oh, I've love bombed, right? Again, you might be hearing, you're listening and you're nodding and you're seeing yourself not as the quote unquote, right? Maybe you see yourself as not as the perpetrator, but as the person who keeps falling for it. I don't know. If that's where you are, the work goes deeper. I've gone into detail in another episode about why you keep choosing the same kind of person. That's the one I did about the wrong picker and what the inner work looks like. And I will link to that, right? The short version is that your nervous system is responding to what's familiar, and what's familiar isn't always what's good for you, right? Familiar feels safe to your brain, even when it's terrible for you. That's right. That's the neuroscience of that. But for today, I will say, so go listen to the picker episode, why your picker's broken and it's not broken and all that. The move is simpler. You don't need to do all that inner work before you can use this episode. I want to say that. You just need to slow down enough to apply the pace test. Okay. And again, if you see yourself in so I went both ways here. Sorry about that. If you see yourself in this, you're like, oh, I'm doing the love bombing. I'm doing the stuff. Again, it's a way to do your internal work, right? Like to see because that might be why you're picking the wrong people. Also, because you're acting in this unhealthy way. Hope that makes sense. Okay. Did I do that? Well, I think I said all that pretty well, but we'll see. And I want to say too, your gut already knew, you just couldn't hear it. I again, really believe that. You're rarely... You always know. You do always know somewhere. You're just not listening, right? You're not hearing your inner self. And so again, I want you to listen to that episode. But as always, this boils down to mindfulness. I know you have to be in your moments enough to notice how your body's reacting, to notice what responses you're having. To me, it's the single most useful tool you have. For everything we've talked about today, right? Because you need that ability to slow down enough to actually feel what's happening in your body in this person's presence. So yes, your gut already knows. Your gut almost always knows before your brain does. The trouble is that your gut speaks more quietly and fear speaks really loudly. And most of us spend a lifetime listening to the wrong voice, right? You know that. Again, I did this other episode where I went deep, but the short version is that your gut speaks in your body. It's quiet, it's slow, it's almost never urgent. It shows up as sort of this nagging sense that something's off when everything looks fine on paper. It's like how your shoulders won't drop when you're with this person. Notice that your shoulders are up. You notice that you're holding your breath maybe before you walk into the room. Maybe you keep mentally rehearsing what you'll say, what you'll do, how you'll act before your interactions with this person who supposedly makes you so happy, right? You're always second guessing yourself. Yeah. But, fear is the opposite, right? Fear is loud. Fear is urgent. It's fast. Fear is the voice that says, I have to commit right now. I'm going to lose them. Fear is the voice telling you to ignore the small thing you notice because what if you mess this up? And fear is what is really keeping you matching their pace. And here's probably the part you don't want to hear, but I love you and I'm going to say it. The loudest voice in your head, the one telling you to commit, to dive in, to not be too cautious, to not blow this, that voice isn't your gut. It's not your gut. Your gut is the quieter one underneath it that's been trying to get a word in and hasn't been able to. The apps and texting culture really makes all of this so difficult, so hard. The constant pressure, to respond, to match enthusiasm, to keep up with someone else, right? Is all that feeds fear, all of it. None of it feeds gut. Your gut needs space. It needs the kind of time and quiet you can only get when you're not, being texted, being notified 47 times a day, right? If a relationship later turned out to have red flags, you've probably had the experience of looking back and realizing something in you knew. You felt like the tightness, you felt the held breath, you felt the inability to relax. You just couldn't slow down enough to hear that quieter voice over the louder one. That's what's happened. Okay. And of course, I have my free mindfulness starter kit. If you haven't gotten it yet, just go download it for God's sakes. So what do you do if you're already in this kind of relationship? If you're already recognized yourself, or recognize someone you're with here, the answer doesn't have to be a traumatic exit. I'm not saying this means it's all for naught, right? The answer is just a deliberate slowdown. Stop accepting the future talk. Stop matching the pace. Watch what happens when you don't lean in as hard. What happens? Real connection holds up under a slower pace. Performance falls apart because performance can't sustain a slower speed without exposing what's underneath it. So to me, the pace test it's not like diagnostic. It's protective. Slow it down, slow your roll. The truth shows itself. I'm telling you right now. I'm telling you, it shows itself. So let me wrap up. Let me wrap up this episode because we've been at it a minute. So these 8 behaviors all share one thing in common. Okay. They give you a feeling that's supposed to come at the end of a long, slow, mutual process of getting to know someone. And they give it to you at the beginning. The intensity is the wrong ingredient. Okay. The right ingredient is time. So when something feels too good in early dating, the question isn't, is this real? Is this real? The question, is this happening at the speed of trust or at the speed of someone who needs me to commit before I can see clearly? That's the question. The pace itself is the message. You're not going to get this perfect. Nobody does. I want to say that. But the more you can train yourself to feel the pace, to notice when something is moving faster than it should, to honor those small moments of this is a lot, this is fast, the less likely you are to end up 6 months or 6 years from now wondering how you missed it. That's really what I want to say. You didn't miss it. You felt it. You just didn't you just need to trust yourself enough to slow down when you do feel it. Okay. That's all I want to say on that. So I have a great free resource for you on this. I'm calling it, what do I call it? Is this a green flag or just a red flag? It's a quick self-check for early dating. It's a free resource. It's a, tool you can use the next time you're in early dating, or to look back honestly at a past relationship and see what you might have been picking up on. And as always, if you want to go deeper, this week's Therapy to Go bundle is awesome, if I do say so myself, and I do. It's built to help you really map your own patterns, give you scripts for slowing a relationship down without explaining yourself, walk you through, there's journaling prompts that help you understand why fast feels safe to your particular nervous system. There's a ton, there's like a bunch of, and they always include today's free download if you want that. It's all just $10. Highly, highly recommend if any of this is feeling like, oh my gosh, this is so me over and over again. All right. That's it for today. I love you so much. Thank you for being here with me. I feel, so incredibly grateful and blessed. We're getting right at the end of season 8 of this podcast. I'm going to cry. I'm not going to cry. I just can't believe I've been doing this so long and you've been listening and here with me. And, it's my favorite part of the week. It really is. Talking to you and just writing these and doing the research and putting them together and hearing your responses. And it's amazing. So love you so much. Have an amazing week. And, please do the work. All right.